right, so it shouldn't really take you that long to do that if you know what you're doing. So what's the first step? I'll just start around at the beginning and go around. Brianne, what's first step? First step. Whatever you did. How many different parts? 20. And then you went every 5. 4, every 4. All right. So you actually did this doing it a ratio way. You're doing it as a ratio. Where did you put, what was the number you put your point on? Oh, where'd you, it says find point P, which means you're putting a point on that line. Where'd you put it? Oh, I didn't really have which point was which. I guess maybe, is that what, if that was confusing, hopefully you assumed A was on the left, B was on the right. So, yeah, it should be like that, man. But I need a number. And your answer, when I say find point P, yeah, you should be able to put it on the line, but the way I know if you put it in the right spot isn't by where you put it so much, it's by the number you give me. Wouldn't be it. Just think about it. If this is a ratio of 3, 3, and 2, if you're doing it the ratio way. But again, you need, so again, well, I'm telling you, the number 8 is wrong. Again, you have part of it right, but you're missing something. So you got to know, if you want to do it a different way and I ask you to do it, I'm fine with that, but you got to know how to use that way. That's not the correct answer. Does anybody know what the 8 represents that she told me? It does represent something. You know what it means, or you answer? Let's go with that question first before I move on. What does the 8 represent? Anybody? I doubt anybody did. But that's the ratio way. You're doing it the ratio way, which is fine. And the 8 is a number you need. It represents something, but it's not the answer to the problem. What did we say ratios are about? If we have ratios, what are they measuring? Like, what are they? Amount, or if it's a line segment, what is it? If there's not really an amount on a line segment, what was it they were measuring? In your notes, don't have it written down. You need to know this. It does compare to, so what is it telling us about the 2 items? So this is telling us about the 2 line segments, right? But what is it comparing? What do we compare when we compare 2 line segments? What feature or characteristic of those line segments are we comparing? The word that we did in the bell work, pretty sure yesterday, I asked you to define it. Length. We're comparing the length. The 8 that you gave me is the length of the left line segment. But it's not the answer, because where did we start? Look at the left number. 13 is the final answer. Okay, uh-oh. Now, you didn't immediately pass it already, man. Yeah. Who knows? It'll save you from getting a phone call. Yeah. So what you had calculated, your concept was right, but you got to finish it off. You calculated out how long is the left segment going to be. You split up. So I'm just going to quickly remind you that this is also the lesson we did. Brianne said, well, I know that line is 20 units long. My ratio in my ratio, she did it the ratio way. So you actually would have to kind of flip. Actually, that's wrong. It's not 8. Wouldn't be, wait, is for the final answer? Yes, it'll be 17. Because think about it. If this is the weight, right? And I forgot I made this mistake because I don't teach this way. If B is weighted 2, it's actually going to pull that point over there, right? B is heavier. So you would, if you're going to do it the ratio way, which you can, you have to understand where the point is ultimately going to fall based on the weights. And just like if we do the ratio way using weights, we had to flip the ratio. If you do the weights way or the ratio way, you got to flip the numbers also. So if you're going to change the way you do the problem, then you got to flip the numbers around. So yeah, 13 is not the right answer. The left segment needs to be the longer segment because again, you got to think that the midpoint's going to get pulled to the heavier weight. So now I'm just going to go ahead. We got to get moving. I'm going to go ahead and do this the weighted average way. 17, yes. So we would put the weight of A above A, the weight of B above B. And then we just do that formula. Circle those, that's what we'll multiply. Circle those, that's what we'll multiply. Once we multiply those together, we add those two numbers together. And then last, hopefully I can, yeah, that's fine. Last, we would divide by all the weights added together. So if you do that, you should have gotten 10. 2 times 5 is 10. Just multiply those together. Plus 3 times 5 is 75. And then 85 divided by 5 to give you 17. But yeah, be careful if you're going to flip the problem around and do it a different way. That's why I told you when we did ratios, if you want to flip that around, you got to, like if you want to do it instead of using ratios, you want to do it the weighted average way, you got to flip the ratio around. That's why understanding the concept will tell you maybe sometimes whether or not you did it right or wrong, whether you got the right answer. All right, so that was a quick review, sort of ratios too. Really quickly, we need to do 2 things. I don't know if I'm going to do midpoint or not today. Definitely have to do this though. If you have a point, I'm sorry, a line on a graph, you're not going to be given numbers for the endpoints like we just had the 5 and the 25. You will be given the weights or the ratio or whichever method they're giving. You will be given that. So let's do one with weights first. Let's say they say A has a weight of 2. Actually, we'll say this. A weighs 2 times B. And again, we'll say this is A, B. So A weighs 2 times B. 2 times B. So if they're giving you the weights, I use the weighted average way. First of all, that's the easier way anyway. So I would always use that. But if they're giving you the weights, I would do it the way I'm about to show you to do it. The only thing you have to do is what? Well, let's do the weights first. What do we put for the weight of A? Actually, I'm gonna call it. Let's keep going around. Gavin, what do I put for the weight of A? It says A is 2 times B. Some people are really on my radar, by the way. If you got a 0 on that quiz, you're really on my radar. I'll be checking on you a lot. So. What's it say? We don't. So we no longer get away with I don't know anymore. Like your I don't knows are done. So I'll stick on. So pay attention. I will stick with you until you are so uncomfortable that you want to crawl in a hole and disappear. Because that's what you've earned now. You got to get it. I got to get you to the point where you get it because you weren't getting it on your own when I let you have freedom. So with that in mind, pay attention. You don't want to be like me, like working with you the entire lesson, then you need to get it. So what does it say? So what's the number it says A weight? 2. That's it. I mean, the weight should be pretty easy. Sometimes they'll actually specifically say A has a weight of, and then it's that number. But if it says weighs 2 times B, then A weighs 2. I mean, it literally says that right there. The only somewhat tricky one will be the B, because they don't tell us anything about B, but what does that mean if we don't get any information about B? It's a 1, right? So that's a 1. Now, this is the part you got to remember. On a coordinate plane, when you don't have endpoints, we have to come up with the endpoints. And it's not just one number, because it's a coordinate plane, it's an X and a Y. Like if I were to ask you what's this point, you can't just say 1. Well, actually, we would never say 1. Let's do this one. If I were to ask you what this point is right here, you wouldn't be able to just say 1. I'm like, okay, what do you mean 1? Like, there's ones all over the place for X. You can't just give me one value. You have to give me an X and a Y. So what's the value? So now we're past Gavin, Rihanna. What's the value for the left point? What's the, I guess I can say coordinate. What's the coordinate for the left point for A? And it's a little hard to see, but I'll help you count. Hey, well, not 8. -8. Remember, when we go we have to use the negative, because when we do the math, we're going to be multiplying 2 things together. And if we don't use the negative, we're going to get the wrong answer. Let's do this. So X is -8. You know what? Let's do this really large so that you can really, oh man, I hate it because every time I erase it changes. So really large, and then when we do the math, it'll be easier to see when I circle this stuff. And then what's the Y? Y is 1, because we're going up, which is a positive. This is +1, down will be negative. So that is a positive. Next, we have Sade. What's the B, X and Y? Work on what? It's 5, right? I think you just probably couldn't see. So 1, 2, 3, and a lot of times you won't have numbers. Actually, kids miss it more when they have numbers because they look at the wrong number, the number on the wrong side. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4 is my X. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is my Y. So there are my numbers I need for the right point, for point B. So you have to come up with that. Once you do that, it's the same problem. So I'm going to take the weight and I'm going to multiply it times the first value, the X. I'm going to take my weight over here, multiply it times the first value, which is the X. Always make sure you're using the X's at the same time, and then the Y's at the same time. Don't use an X and Y. And then if you haven't finished that out, I want you to finish. Well, actually, we just started it, so I want you to finish it. So add those together. What do we divide by? 2 plus 1, right? We add all the weights together. So the weight of there is 2. Weight over here is 1. So we'll be dividing by 3. So you finish that out and do the Y value. And then our point, like we'd be putting a point like point C or something like that. So point C is going to be in the format of a coordinate. Zoom in for that. Oh. Point C. If you need the other value, it was 4, 5 for point B. The weight was 1. If you didn't, hopefully you drew this out. When I do this, even if you don't you don't need the coordinate plane, just draw a diagonal line and write all of the information on just like this stuff. You don't really need the graph behind it. That's how our answer is going to look. And if we do it correctly, the numbers we come up with better give us a point on the line, or if we did something wrong. It's got to be on the line. That's what we're doing, is we're putting a point on the line, separating the line into two lines. Which line segment's gonna be longer in this case, the left one or the right one? Because this is going to pull it this way, so the right one will be longer. Good, that was actually kind of a trick question. Thinking you might look at the two and think left one would be bigger. Good. And that would be another good quiz question, is using weights, which line would be longer? So keep that in mind. Sound like everybody's pretty good with that. Are you all done? Get them both?
Let's see.
All right. Well, again, I shouldn't see anybody just sitting there doing nothing. I've already told you how to do the X. Multiply what I circled. Now I'll zoom back out so you can see the other one if you weren't keeping up. You got to do. You go too fast for you to sit there and try to keep up after I start talking. So you multiply what's in each circle. You add those two numbers together, and then you're going to divide by all the weights added up, which would be a total of 3. That should give you your X, and then you do the same thing, but you got to do it with the Y values. The weights don't change. Raise your hand if you're done. All right, I'll give another 30 seconds, and then we got to move on. I wanted you to have. I didn't mean to spend so much time on quizzes, but that was definitely important. Now you're down to an hour. I want you to have at least 45 minutes practice time. Probably giving you the whole period to do the quiz on Monday, because it's gonna be a long quiz. And now a few more people in the wrapping up. All right, so if you weren't able to finish that in that time frame, considering I did all the setup for you, you're gonna struggle on the quiz. Time is also a factor when you start getting into the quizzes that have a lot on them. What did you get for the X value? Where did I stop? Today, I think so. Nayland, what'd you get for the X value? I don't know what it is, so I'm truly asking. Again, there's no longer any more mess up, because what that tells me is people sat there and didn't do it. Don't ever sit there and do anything, because I'm going to come check moving forward. We've gotten to that point based on the physical. You said that's 2 times -8, right there. Now it would be. So you did an extra step somehow. So you did this correct. That was the correct number, but then you should have been saying plus. So you did the -8 times the 2. Then you wouldn't have done this times 2 again. You're doing it a second time, but you do that. So you see, you're taking those and multiplying them, adding that to the 4 times the 1, which should have been 4 times 5. So you erase the 2 and just leave the -16. Actually, tell it. I want you to write here -8. So you know how to do it, and then over, and then change that to 1, and then divided by the 2 plus 2. Change all that. All right, so next is Isaiah. Not doing anything right. So again, my rule is no phones. If you sit there and sleep, I don't babysit. So I'm not gonna worry about that. If you just not put the effort in, but if a student is not gonna put the effort into it, I don't have to babysit. Did you get it? We get 16 plus 4, so add those together. What do you get when you add them together? You don't do it anyhow. A lot of people did some math in their head. I shouldn't say a lot. There were people that did math in their head on simple problems like 4 plus -1, or even maybe 6 plus 8, and they missed it. You gotta use your calculator on simple stuff to get it right. Use it, because I mean, I have to take off for that. If you don't get the right answer, you don't get the right answer. So don't, even if it's simple, just make sure you check your math with a calculator. All right, so now what do we have to do? Divide that by, and it's negative 12, right? So do that. So Brickland's coming up with the first number. Do that in blue, I think. Actually, no, let's do that in green, because I circled it in green. So negative 12 divided by 3 is, so is that what everybody got? Negative 4? All right, so there's our x. Now we just do that same exact thing, only we have to use the y value. So we go over, the weights don't change, because the point is still weighted the same thing. Nothing changes. We just had to use two different values in x and y. So where did I stop? So Camila, what'd you get for the y value? So it should have been 3 plus 5, so 8. 8 divided by 3, and you got what? Oh, I'm sorry, 2. 2 plus 5, so 7 divided by 3. Sorry. I added it again. So it was what again? So I'm going to write it as a fraction. 2 1/3. But if you got 2.33333, that's the same. All right, so now if we did this correctly, when we go to put this point, because we have an x and a y now, when we go to put point C on the line, I guess it doesn't matter what color it was. It better be on the line, like not somewhere in the rest of the graph. So, and again, if it's a 2 1/3, we won't know exactly that it's on the line, but if it's close enough, we can assume we got it right. So negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and yeah, I'd say that's right about 1/3. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable that I did that process. If it does not fall on the line, then you need to go back and check your math or your setup or something. So this one's a pretty easy one to kind of check what you did. So that's how you do it on a coordinate plane. I'm not going to go through does anybody still need to write anything? I'm not going to go through a whole long process, but I want you to try it first. I erased it all, but I'm not even going to move the line. That'll make it faster because you should have written down what the values for the points are, the x and the y. Now I want you to do this. I want you to put a point C on that line. So that it splits that line into a ratio (3 to 2). So we're using a ratio. I don't know why I put parentheses around it. So now we're using a ratio. What do we say we can do when we see that word ratio? What can we do? We can do it the way Brianne was going to do it, but I'll tell you right now, this one, it's I'm going to tell you don't do it. Because here's the problem. You can't figure out the length of that line easily. You can't just count from here to here or do subtraction to come up with the length of that line. So it's hard to do that part. There's a whole long process to do it. I'm not even going to show it to you. It's in the book. If you really want to, just do it the weighted average way. So if we want to do the weighted average way, what do we have to do to use the weighted average way if we're given a ratio? We just flip the ratio and then you do the weighted average. So the weight, again, this would be A, this would be B. So the weight of the left point of A isn't the 3, it's just the 2. The weight of the right point isn't the 2, it's just the 3. That's the only thing you have to change to do the weighted average. Now just the same exact thing we did in the last problem. And then we'll talk about whether or not that makes sense. Well, let's talk about that now. If we know the ratio needs to be 3 to 2, so ignore what we did here first of all, because we should have thought about this first. What does the ratio tell us? What is the ratio comparing? So a ratio is referring to what? What measure? What length, right? So when we put the point on the line, which line segment is going to be the longer line segment? Well, just say left or right. So I'm gonna put a point somewhere on this line. That'll mean that I have two little line segments. Which one's gonna be longer, the left one or the right one? This is one you should be able to answer. Left. Ratios are about length. You didn't know that? Write it down. So that means this is the left length, that's the right one. Simple as that. Weights pull the point. Ratios are about the length of the segment. And that makes sense because if this is the bigger segment, that means the point would be more over here. Well, if that would mean B would have to be the heavier point because it pulled the point in that direction. So all of that makes sense the way I have it set up.
What? Getting my computer fixed. It's like 30 kids.
All right, dude. I mean, you just missed the whole lesson. Hmm?
I'm watching them.
Well, you know what? Apparently nobody did that before that last quiz. So I just went over a whole big thing on quizzes. We don't touch phones in the class. Because they were not good. All right, so all that makes sense. You should understand why it makes sense. If you don't, you need to ask me about it or go back and work on it on your own. Your assignments, I think I've already given it to you, but I'll say it again. This is your quiz on Monday. I'm not going to put midpoints on. Just gonna let you practice instead of doing more lessons. So midpoints will not be on it. So I'll erase that. So you just need to know how to put a point on a line using weights and how to put a point on a line using ratios. Really, you can do it all using weights. All you gotta do is flip the ratio, flip the numbers around when you do the weights. So you got more than 45 minutes to practice today. If you don't do well on Monday, we may go on the no technology list. You may never, like I said, lightning strikes, thunder, can't see anything, can't do anything, you won't touch phone. You don't do well. Yes, you need to get, I mean, everybody's been pretty good about bathrooms so far this year. I think probably because they're cracking down on it finally out the mall. Can't really get away with it. But just make sure you get back to practice. I don't care if you work together, probably better to work together because sometimes I won't be right next to you to help, but I'll certainly be walking around helping. I'll do it anytime. So, let's see if we can start now. I will also pull the quizzes out if you want to see what you got. I can't really take a long time to go over it, but show you really quickly. Basically 24. Here. I'm gonna stop the recording now. I don't think there's anything else we'll need to do. Stop. Oh, is it not going? Oh, yeah.